Welcome to Liberate Your Authentic Self with Dr. Andrea Pennington, the prescription for living your life out loud. Wouldn't you like to feel free? You know, how you could go out in public, not even caring what you're wearing. Like you could have messy hair. You could have just regular looking clothes on. Wouldn't it be wonderful to speak what's really on your mind? Okay, I'm not talking about cursing people out or being a total beep, but wouldn't it feel just amazing to not have all of this mental pressure of censoring yourself or wondering what other people are going to think, or always putting yourself 5 steps ahead to make sure that you're not going to embarrass yourself? Well, I don't know. For me, that sounded like heaven just a few years ago, because I was actually living in my own little mental state of prison. I worried about what other people thought of me. I worried about how I looked and how I sounded, and I wasn't free. Of course, now you see me. I'm liberated, hosting a show called Liberate Your Authentic Self, and the way I got there was, okay, a lot of trial and error. But if you've heard any of my shows before, then you know that I'm kind of a science nerd and I love my processes. Well, joining me today is a very dear friend and a colleague and one of my mentees, and that is Helene Philipsen, joining us from Denmark. Hi, Helene.
Hi, Andrea.
And Helene has also found the emotional freedom to be and express her authentic self, and like me, she is sharing her gifts and her tools and her passion with the rest of the world. So through her coaching programs and retreats and speeches around the world, Helene is setting people free. And today, yes, woo woo! Today we are going to talk about how you can get a little bit of this emotional freedom to get past any blocks or, I don't know, hang-ups that you might have that are affecting you and your relationships. What do you say about that, Helene? Is that a good setup for today?
Yeah, I think it sounds awesome. I think it sounds really great. And you know what? It just made me think when you were speaking just now. I was thinking about how in my life before, I don't actually think that I was aware of how much I was a prisoner of my own emotional boundaries. You know, of my limitations and everything that was going on within me. What I could tell was that I wasn't feeling good. You know, I felt like I was suffering. I felt pretty miserable, and it wasn't all the time, but it was there, and so I just didn't feel good. But I don't actually think that at the time I had the awareness that this was about emotional freedom or about codependent behavioral patterns, or I don't think I actually knew that, Andrea, to be honest with you. But what I could tell was that I wasn't doing great.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good inside, and for me personally, I dealt with quite a bit of anxiety, like anxiety attacks or panic attacks, and sometimes I would feel depressed. I didn't have a depression, but I had sort of depressive patterns, and mostly I felt like it was so difficult for me to interact with other people. I mean, I did it all the time.
Yeah.
I've always been a very sort of open, outspoken, I didn't mind speaking to strangers. And so it wasn't like that at all. But the connection with intimate connections, my partner, my best friends, I always felt really confused. And I remember thinking so often, okay, what is the right thing to do in this situation? Or how am I supposed to react in this situation? So I was trying to figure it out all the time, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge, right? Because when we're staying in our head and we're worried about what they're thinking, what I'm doing, what should I do next, how do I fit in, trying to analyze and understand everything, we miss out on the real connection. We miss out on joy. So even though we may not have a language to say, I am in emotional bondage, we know what that feels like and what the resulting interaction is like. So one of the things that you've shared with me before is how you dealt with that not feeling so great. And one of the ways you dealt with it was with food. For me, it was my overachieving, trying it's still the external focus, right? It's like trying to find something out there that's going to make me feel like I'm enough, or to like at least calm down the anxiety, because I could pour my focus into that next goal, that next achievement, that next project. And, you kind of realize.
Yeah, it's validate me, validate me, please. Somebody tell me I'm good enough, validate me. Somebody make me whole, make me feel good inside is what it was for me, because I was definitely, I've been a businesswoman for many years, but before I was just miserable inside whilst doing it. And it didn't, I didn't cherish my successes. I didn't. And I also failed on a regular basis, in the sense that I got some very, very precious experiences from the failing,
Right.
in quotation or whatever you call it. But it was a really, really hard way to live.
Yeah.
And looking for that approval, looking for the validation, looking for somebody to tell me that I was good enough, that I was lovable. I mean, honestly, come on, that is a pretty shitty emotional life. At least that's what it was for me.
And it was that for me as well. And I did feel depressed. And like you, I never actually got a formal diagnosis, although I went to the doctors and literally to a psychiatrist, and I was like, look, I'm tired of pretending and hiding. And I just like, bleh! Told him everything I was really feeling, the thoughts that were racing through my head at night, the anxiety, and how low my mood was, and how dark some of my thoughts were. And I fully expected to walk out of that doctor's office with a prescription for antidepressants, or maybe a hospitalization, so I could like get my shizzle together. And he said no. And I'm like looking at him like, wait, what? How are you going to tell me no? I am depressed, damn it. I'm like finally like owning up to it and admitting like, I had very, very dark thoughts. And, I know personally what it's like to have those ideals of wanting your life to be over. I never made any plans. So we call that suicidal ideations. We had ideas about it, and I had fantasies that my life would be better if it were over. I never had any desire to act out on it. I never like created a plan. But I admitted all of that, thinking, okay, this is the real deal. This is the real confession time, and I will accept whatever needs to happen, because I can't go on living like this. I can't like put up with the pain anymore. And what he told me was, you're not depressed. And I'm like, I think I should know. And he said, and you're not crazy, because I also thought with that level of anxiety and the racing thoughts, I was like, this is not normal. And because of his work at a really serious psychiatric hospital, he said to me, Andrea, you know the hospital that I work for, the kind of patients that I take care of. He said, so I don't like to use the term, but do you think that I probably know what crazy is? And I said, yeah, that's kind of why I chose you. And he says, well, if I know crazy, I can tell you you're not crazy. And what came through the process of being in therapy and being in that confessional was helping just get the thoughts out of my head and make sense of them, and to also come to terms with what I was feeling was normal. So in other words, based on the thoughts that I had, that I wasn't good enough, or that judging my the things that I was doing, I wasn't ever giving myself credit for being smart. Like, I literally thought I wasn't smart. And he was like, that makes no sense, right? Like, so literally we had to unpack several of these limiting beliefs. And when I finally realized that A, I wasn't crazy for having those thoughts, which then translated into the feelings, and B, those thoughts were not even actually based in truth and based in reality, even though they felt like they were. Like all the programming from my childhood and this, anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But it was a revelation to me to start to recognize that who I really am as an artist, as a creator, as a teacher. If I could accept that this is who I am and stop judging myself against what society says or what I thought, like, it's not even that society necessarily was telling me this. Like, I had created my own mental belief system about what I quote unquote should be. And I know you have a whole thing about the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, But I had all these shoulds in my head about what it would mean if I were a good doctor or a good daughter or a successful person. There were all these shoulds attached to it. And once I was able to like get clarity that those were not real, they were self-imposed, and I could just accept that who I really am is kind of a goofball, as you know, because you are one too, and I say it with
Yes.
love. But once I was able to just say, this is who I am, and just accept it, and then to have someone validate and kind of say, and that doesn't make you crazy, that just makes you you. Like little by little over time, I was able to just relax into being me and stop hiding and stop trying to force myself into any other box or being a chameleon to fit in. So I don't know how I got on that tangent, but for me, that's really what my experience was like.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've heard your story a couple of times, but every time I hear different sides of it, and different bits and parts of it, and I'm really, really happy for that, Andrea, because like it reminds me of my own story, and it reminds me of those situations, even though it was a different thing for me. Like it reminds me of when you say you thought you were crazy. Like I had a partner who would continuously tell me I was crazy. And I didn't have suicidal thinking or ideation, but what I did was I used to go into this victim role where I was in my head. I would think, well, if I died, then everybody would realize just how valuable I was, just how lovable I was, just how much they would miss me. And it's kind of a childish way, that if I wasn't here, you would miss me and love me. It's a very sort of inner child speak, coming out. And I remember thinking that, and it kind of ties into, because food was my medication, food and love. I would find myself a super dysfunctional relationship and stay in it for years and years and years, and then medicate my emotions with food. And another way I used to think about it was I used to, that ties into this whole death angle, was that I used to think, okay, if I could just get run over by a really big truck and be in a coma for 6 months, then I would wake up and I would have lost all this weight.
Oh, wow.
So I would think things like that. I would think maybe there's a clinic somewhere in Dubai. Maybe if I robbed a bank or something, I could go to, and I'm serious right now, these are fantasies in my head because I'm so desperate to get rid of the obesity I was dealing with and the shame that was so profound. My entire focus was on the external things.
Yeah.
And I realized that your body is not external, but it actually is compared to your emotions and your soul and your core wisdom, your heart. My focus was on if I could just lose this weight, everything would be okay. So if I could rob a bank, go to Dubai and maybe be put in an artificial coma and then have some sort of tube put in me somewhere, then I would wake up and of course I would have no muscle left, but I could train that back, right? I mean, I would have these like really, really extreme thoughts of solutions, And I remember thinking, like, if I told people what actually went on in my head, they would admit me to some sort of loony hospital or something. But that's how I was thinking, because I was so desperate. I tried all these diets. I did so much self-harm, Andrea. I did so much self-harm in the name of weight loss, just because I was so desperate, really. And of course, none of it worked. None of it worked. It would work short term. I would get really good temporary solutions. I would lose, 60 pounds, but then I would lose 20 pounds, depending on whatever it was. And then I'd put them all back on and more.
Right.
And so it was just, but that, it just made me think about that when you shared that, and this feeling of being crazy or being extreme. And for me, that would build up, it started gradually. The more extreme I treated myself, the more extreme I was also willing for other people. I discovered this whole, you very rarely let other people harm you in a way that you haven't already harmed yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. And that for me was a really big discovery, because it means you have to own that you have either thought or felt things or done things to or about yourself that you then allow others to do later on, whether it's abuse or it could be emotionally, verbally, physically, but it comes from a place of I have already thought those thoughts about myself or done things to myself that crossed my boundaries to such an extreme. Because if others do things to us that we haven't done to ourselves, it feels so wrong,
right,
so horrible, so new, that we will be shocked by it and remove ourselves from it, And now I'm not talking about situations where you're more or less powerless. I'm not talking about extreme violence and where you're, where you are more or less, it's out of your control. But things like how our partners treat us.
Yeah.
And how we respond and react to that. Do we stay with it? Do we stay in it?
Right.
How do it can be a best friend, patterns between best friends. I mean, have you ever tried that? Having these friends where you can tell that you go on this, it's almost like an obsessive, cycle where you'll do things together that somewhere deep down, this shit isn't good.
Exactly.
This is not good.
Exactly.
But you're just on this, and then you'll pull apart and come back together like magnets. Boom,
Because it's like, as you say, there's that familiarity. It's comfortable. Even though it's torture, it's comfortable torture. When we get back from the break, what I'd love to dive into is this idea about self-worth. Because if we really thought that we were worth being treated nicely, then we would demand that of others. But you can't demand that of others if you're not first willing to demand that of yourself, which means I've got to stop abusing myself, stop saying these mean things to myself, stop torturing myself, stop belittling myself and making myself wrong for everything. Because I think for me, that was at the very core of all of what I've tolerated. It was this idea that, wait a minute, am I worthy of being happy, of being loved? Am I even worthy of success? Or do I always have to earn and earn and earn? So when we get back from the break, I'd love to pick it up there. Is that all right with you?
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Tune in daily to get fired up with insight and inspiration for purposeful living, conscious relationships, and soulful success. You're watching Liberate Your Authentic Self with me, Dr. Andrea Pennington. Check out the live version of this show, where I answer your questions in real time. Visit facebook.com/Dr. Andrea Pennington.
Welcome back after this break at Liberate Your Authentic Self. Today, I am the honored guest of Dr. Andrea Pennington, and we are talking about emotional freedom. Here at America Out Loud, Andrea and I have both been co-hosts on the show Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of a Pleasure, Season 1, which you can catch online and on podcast to your pleasure. It's been really, really great. And what America Out Loud is all about, and both of these shows are all about, is letting the voices be heard, whether they are silent or loud, but it's putting it out there. And I would say we are two of the louder voices, Andrea. And I know, and I will allow myself to say that I know this is a passion for both Andrea and I to shine the light of some of the more difficult issues sometimes in life, and to try and put help out there, available tools for the people who are looking and who need them. So our topic today of emotional freedom and living a free and healthy, happy life at ease within yourself, first and foremost, is right up that alley, right?
Absolutely. Because obviously you can't have an out loud life if you're not really getting down to the core of what it means and why you want it and why you deserve it.
Exactly. And right before the break, you talked about being worthy and feeling worthy. From my own core and my story, I will say that I never believed that I deserved love, respect. And this doesn't come from a destructive point of view or from a self-pitying, oh, I'm not good enough. It comes from a fundamental core belief from certain things that happened when I was a child, certain behaviors that happened, dysfunctional behaviors in my family life, that I took along with me on the rest of my journey, and I incorporated them into my own view of the world, into my own perception of this life that I was living. And then I developed certain survival strategies that would help me pull through, and that would help me get the love that we all as children need. So we start already as children, we start pretzeling ourselves into these different shapes so we can get the love that we need to survive. So whatever we figure out that our parents like, approve, will praise, or give attention on, because that could also be negative attention, we will do to get the attention and to get the love we need to survive, right? And that very much goes for me as well. I did not believe that I was good enough. I really didn't.
Yeah, and neither did I. And you're right. For me, it also started in childhood. It was hearing these messages that I needed to always be asking why, and focus on education and all the other stuff, the arts and performing and music. That wasn't important. What was really important was demonstrating that you were smart. And unfortunately, especially as a kid, there's always more to learn. So you never feel like you're smart enough. So even with straight A's, good grades, all of that, and even certificates and whatnot, I never felt like I was enough, good enough, smart enough, whatever enough. And so it started this kind of pattern of always looking outside of myself for that next thing to achieve, that next certificate or degree to prove that I've gotten that stamp of approval, so I must be okay, which means, okay, I've got the validation, which means you can admire me and love me now. And what's sad is that eventually I figured out that my dad, for example, he still loved me. Even if I got B's and sometimes C's, he still loved me. But that program had already been set. So I was still on the achievement track looking for outside validation well into my 30s. Yeah, it's crazy how much time we spend in life on these journeys. And actually, sometimes I think, I totally embrace that everybody's on their own journey. That is what this is about. And that when you're ready to look at it or to grow or to change, if it isn't working for you, you're ready when you're ready. Yeah. At the same time, I can tell that it is definitely part of my mission to tell my story, to share your story, so that it's heard, so that if we need to hear it, we can find that recognition and we can maybe get a spark of hope to get that process started. And I can't help but think, okay, had I heard my story 10 years earlier, would I have been ready to embark on this journey? Would I have understood that there was hope and tools? Maybe I wouldn't, I don't know. But I think putting it out there is part of it, just being honest about it, because that also takes away some of the taboo and some of the shame, right? Exactly. Because we don't grow up generally with models of people living their truth, following their own path, and being okay with it. We have these models of everyone else is also trying to fit in, trying to be in the cool group, trying to not be ashamed of this and that and the other. So even after you get outside of the house and you're into a school situation or some community situation, the models that we're getting are still models of conformity, fit in, go along with the crowd, don't, stand out too much, don't be too weird. And yet the reality is that's not going to provide the happiness that any of us wants, nor the sense of true acceptance. Because if we have to be accepted just by fitting in, it never feels good. And I know you've been in the same position. Like, you might get into the cool club or whatever, but if it doesn't feel good, it's like, what's the use of that? And for me, I think by you sharing your story as openly and honestly and sometimes as raw as you do, and me too. This is not something, like, I'm totally comfortable with it now. But like when I look back on even just the TED Talk that I gave a few years ago, it's kind of hard to watch it because I can tell at the times when my voice was shaky, and I had to rehearse it because it was like, oh my God, I'm finally telling the world my truth. But now I'm like, I'm laid back. I don't care if I make mistakes or mess up, because I'm just like, this is my reality. And what has happened is getting the response from other people saying, oh my God, I felt that way. I thought that way. I did that too. And what's happening now is I'm seeing people send me emails and reach out to me, or they come to a live event, and they are a few years ahead. Something that you were just saying, like, we learn as we go, and many of us, like myself included, I unfortunately am a kind of, I got to hit my head against that wall to prove, they told me that it's hard, but I need to prove how hard it really is. And so like you, I'm saying, well, if someone had told me this in my 20s, would I have believed them enough to say, oh, they're telling me that I can be my authentic self, my weird, goofy, whatever, I don't have to be so perfect. I may not have believed it if someone just told me that. But if I had enough models in the world of people writing books and being on stage, being on TV and radio, the things that I actually love doing, and they didn't have to be absolutely perfect, then I might have actually tried it. Because once you try it and you find out, oh, I didn't die, nobody kicked me off stage, and I'm alive to do this again for another day, then little by little I probably would have believed it. And so I think that's why it's so important to have a platform like we have, where we're open to sharing our truth and giving people tips and insights along the way in my own nerdy way. And you have your emotional freedom formula that lays out step-by-step processes that we can go through, so that as we try on these new behaviors and these new mindsets, we actually prove to ourselves it works.
Yes, because that is just so key. I mean, I see it all the time with my clients, and I had a client just 2 days ago where we were sitting talking about the fact that you go from a place of thinking, I can't succeed with this. I've tried everything. I just can't do it. It's not going to work for me. I might try anyway, but you have such a firm belief that you're either so fucked up it's not going to work, you know what I mean? Or you're not strong enough. I hear this all the time about emotional eating. I have no willpower, I have no self-control, and yet emotional eaters are some of the strongest willed people I have ever met.
Exactly.
And I've been in touch with thousands now. So it's going through the proofs you keep getting of you actually now living life.
Yeah.
Walking that line one day at a time, sometimes an hour at a time, or a week or one situation at a time, and creating awareness on all the things that we are actually dealing with, that we are taking responsibility for, where we are good enough, and start like a compilation of those proofs. And then when you do the work at the same time, and we're going through these different steps in my program, then it's just like one door is slamming open after another. And it's, for me, it's mind-blowing, because even though it may sound a little bit retarded, or whatever, but, I should know this by now. But literally, Andrea, every time it happens with every new person, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm just in awe, because for everybody, it's something different. Even though we may have the same theme, it can be, finding your place in this world as a mother. Figuring out, I have a client who is quite a young woman who's a very successful business owner. Successful business owner. I will say it again a little more articulate. And she is just, what do you call it? Taking names and kicking ass or whatever. She is just, and finding her place with that, because even though from the outside she looks young and successful and just an Instagram story, you know what I mean? But on the inside, and so for her to find her place away from controlling, manipulating, and stressing like a crazy person over this life and really being miserable, so it's something different for everybody, where it just lets go. It lets go of that grip that it has over you, you know, that prison that you live in and can't break out of, it literally amazes me every single time. And I grow every time with these amazing people, you know, I grow every time with them as well. So I'm just sitting there like, yay, you know, because that's why I do what I do, you know. Yeah. I know I say it every time we talk, and I'll say it today as well. You know, I really firmly and truly believe that only by sharing what I have can I keep it. So, you know, that's the place I come from, and, you know, I'm willing to bet money that you are too. It's, you know.
Absolutely. It solidifies it. You're right. It's like by sharing this. And it's also, I think, when you know that you have the answer to something, like, okay, let's just take it to something everyone can relate to, right? Like maybe you see a little baby and they're just starting to walk, and you just have this impulse that you just want to help them. You just want to, you know, don't knock your head. I'm going to just, or, you know, some kid who's trying to read, and you want to sound out the word for them, right? Because you just want to get past that kind of sticking point. Well, it's the same thing with clients. When I see people who are stuck on something that they just need a little finesse, or it's just a little flip of perspective, or like you just mentioned, like if we just change our focus from all the things that all these negative things you're focusing on, and focus it on all the strength that you actually have that may have been applied in a different area. Maybe you're not strong in the area you want to be, but look at your strength in this and this and this. Look at the progress you've made. Like I have this urge, this impulse to do that. Like I want other people to feel that same sense of confidence. Like, you know what, honey, you got this. Because it's in you. It's like all the stuff that's been planted in you to make you think that you're not good enough. All the experiences of quote unquote failure that you just are storing up as proof that you're not good enough and you can't. If you would just take that stuff out, because it's not natural. It's not naturally there. It got implanted and you believed it and bought into it because at maybe the time of life you were in, you might not have had any other higher awareness, or you didn't have anyone else to teach you and show you. So I'm like, you know what? If we can just take out all the bad programming, it's not even that we have to like reprogram and put new stuff in. It's like take out the bad stuff and let your natural brilliance start to shine forth. And just paying attention to who you really are, even before we get into like reprogramming tricks.
Yes, exactly.
Just looking at who you really are and how much of you is really okay and really brilliant and really beautiful and really lovable. Like you are an amazing human being. And as we get comfortable with just recognizing that, then it's easier for them to say, okay, what do I really want to create in my life? And then you start maybe doing a little bit of programming or affirmations or mantras that are going to start to help you keep your focus on where you want to go next.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't, you know, all I want to say now is what Andrea said. No, because, you know, for me, I remember what it felt like when I started walking down that path, and I had been in addiction treatment for my emotional eating. And I remember, you know, my amazing partner now was new to me at the time. And he said, you have to share this with the world. You have to share this whole insane journey of yours with the world so that they can at least hear it and get hope.
Yes.
Just for the hope. And I was like, hell no, I ain't sharing shit with nobody, you know? Because there's a reason we talk about being in recovery and how that solidifies within you before you believe and step out when you're, you know, sometimes it takes years.
Yeah.
There needs to be a buffer of a couple of years before you are ready to do whatever it is you want to do, or whether you want to sponsor or work with other people or step into more education about it. But the point I was trying to get to before I got a little off track was that to reconnect to the strength we have inside, there is something that happens almost every time I sit down for the first time with a new client. The first time we sit down and face to face, or on Skype, face to face, I will hear the words, I'm done, you know? This is the end. I have nowhere else to go. I don't know. I don't want to live like this anymore. I feel like I've tried everything. I feel like I have now failed officially at everything. I obviously can't take responsibility. for any of this that goes on in my life, I must be the weakest person on the planet. And then we just sit there for a couple of seconds and breathe. And then I go, okay, so would you say that it was brave of you to contact me? Mm-hmm. Like if I told you a story of a woman who went through everything you've gone through in life, whether it is, extreme drama or just a regular life battling your emotions, would you say this woman was brave to reach out to somebody like me, or that was a very positive, self-loving move? Yeah, the answer is always yes, absolutely. Right. Yes, I would say that. Okay, would you say that it was really strong, even at what sometimes feels like rock bottom, to take responsibility for that, mm-hmm. and still try to do something about it? Yes, I would say that. And so we hone in on the fact that, that is the ultimate responsibility. That is taking the ultimate self-loving action, is to go and seek help to work on your inner self, right? Your core, your wisdom, your soul, your heart, your whole being, your whole beautiful, beautiful being. And every single one of these souls are just such beautiful women. I tell you, Andrea, and most of them don't feel it and don't know it.
Yeah. But
before too long, they start getting in touch with that, and they just blossom, So that strength that we do have inside, getting in touch with that, dipping your fingertips in it, tasting it, that is me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always say, you're a warrior. You're a goddamn warrior, you know? And I swear, I swear quite a bit. You know that. You guys listening, you've heard me before, you know that. And I say, you're a goddamn warrior. You're fierce. You are a fierce woman. And it makes them feel so uncomfortable in the beginning, mm-hmm. but yet they're intrigued, because we're establishing a real trusting bond in the beginning. And so why would Helene say that I'm a warrior, that I'm a fierce woman? And so we start tapping into those powers. Mm-hmm. Of being a fierce woman. You, Andrea, you're one of the fiercest women I know.
Well, I wasn't always.
No, neither was I.
But yeah, I love that. I wonder what it would have been like if I had sessions with you way back when. So when we get back from the break, I know that obviously many of the people who are listening, if they follow us at all, they know that you and I recently co-hosted a little evening discussion about emotional freedom, which I would love, we'll share the link. Anybody who really wants to learn Helene's 5 keys for emotional freedom, you can click on the link and you can actually listen to the whole discussion where she goes through each of the keys and how you can implement them. But Helene, when we get back, if you would at least just tell us what the keys are without going into it, I think that would be really helpful.
Happily. And they can watch it too, not just listen. They can see us sitting there and doing our thing with our hands and shaking our heads and moving our shoulders and all the things we both do.
Exactly.
Be right back.
You're watching Liberate Your Authentic Self with me, Dr. Andrea Pennington. Check me out on Instagram at Dr. Andrea Pennington. And now, back to the show.
So what if I told you that there were 5 keys to emotional freedom, to really living a kick-ass life, or as we call it here at America Out Loud, living your life out loud? Well, Helene and I recently got together to discuss part of her emotional freedom formula. And Helene, the 5 keys, I think, dovetail very nicely with the kind of work that I've been doing over the years. And that is because they actually work. So just share a little bit about each of these keys.
Okay. Well, key number 1 is honesty. Honesty and awareness. And I sometimes call it a reality check, because what I just run into again and again and again in my own life, as well as in everybody I work with, is this: as long as we're trying to elude reality, as long as we're trying to create a sandcastle and build on that, it's not going to work. And it may sound a little scary, or it may sound like a relief. That depends on where you're coming from, right? But really, that is what starts the setting you free process, is being willing to take an honest look at reality, because from there, we can both change and interact and receive love and feedback, right?
Yeah.
Because think about that for a second. If you're coming from a place of somewhat of a built up, not solid foundation, not really being, true to yourself or with yourself, then everything you get from other people is never truly going to trickle into your core like vitamins, is it?
Yeah.
It's not going to fill your bucket, because you're not coming from a true place. So the honesty and the awareness is like, boom, number one.
Yeah, it's like what I described when I went to see that psychiatrist. It was like coming face to face with reality and being fully, just in that process, being made fully aware of my thoughts, my beliefs, my feelings, and putting it into a real context. Yeah. Yeah,
and actually it's kind of fun. I just want to share with you, back in the day when I was doing my quick fix search, I'd go to anything from, psychologists, and I studied psychology myself, so, that's a little bit ironic. But anyway, I would go to personal trainers, fitness centers, diets. I also went to see a nutritionist, a dietitian. And when it comes to the honesty part, even though what she had to offer was really, really good, it never worked for me, because I'm an emotional eater. I'm a binge eater, even though binge is actually such an annoying word for it. But anyway, because, emotional eaters, we don't have to binge at all. But anyway, back to the point. She said to me, I sat down in front of her, and she gave me a serious dose of reality. I said to her, she said something about planning your meals and shopping for the right things, because obviously she's a dietitian. Her focus is on, dividing your plate into the right types of food and blah, blah, blah. And that spoke right to my intense desire for a quick fix. And I said, but you know what? I'm a very busy person. I have both my own company and a career, and I often don't have time to. And she cut me off and she said, Helene, do you have time to go shopping, or do you have time to be overweight? And I was like, okay, damn, boom. She just, threw it straight in my, but anyway. So that's just a funny story about a serious reality check, but which was on a strange, one of my strange paths, trying to find solutions. But key number 2 is acceptance. Once we are in touch with our reality, where we are right now, what am I scared of? What are my dreams? What do I feel like is not what is not working for me? And what is working for me? Then acceptance of the state we are in right now is a very, very, very important step in empowering ourselves towards effective action.
Yeah. Because
acceptance is key.
Right, because if you're not accepting that this is where you are, then you're fighting. You're just fighting it. Like, no, this is not me. This is not me. Which means you're taking action, but it's not that effective action that's going to get you to where you're going. So, yeah, I'm so with you on that.
Yes, you're in a battle, right? You're in a constant battle with yourself and with the world, because you're not in acceptance. And also, I'll say that some of the signs of not being in acceptance is when we're out there trying to control outcomes.
Yeah.
When we are overworking ourselves to get to a certain result that will then prove that I'm good enough.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And then key number 3 is to work with our belief systems. You said so many awesome things about that just before, really, really good things about, what is this glass ceiling? Where is it? I believe I can go to here and no further. This is my boundary, not my boundary. This is my limit.
Yeah.
And belief systems like I have to do good to be loved. I have to be an A student, or I have to be this, or it could be so many things in life. But identifying with that belief, I have to be, I have to do in order to be loved or accepted, or even worse, the fear-based in order to not be rejected.
Right.
To not lose my partner, to not lose love, to not lose recognition, validation from my family and my loved ones, or my peers, my colleagues. So working on the belief systems is...
I'm glad you bring it up like that, because even though we know that we're not living right, we almost we very rarely actually have the language that says, I know that if I don't get straight A's, I will not be loved. Like, we don't really think in those lyrical ways in our head. But once you go through this process of really identifying and making it concrete, what are the belief systems that your whole world is built upon? Because once those belief systems change, then you can start building a new castle, if you want.
Yeah, and listen, it just makes me think about one key belief that I had two key beliefs that tripped me up from most of my entire, my life, basically, until I went into recovery and started doing all this work that I'm doing. I believed that I wasn't safe in the world, which gave me a shit ton of anxiety. And I believed that what was done to me as a child was done because something was wrong with me. Mm-hmm. So I internalized and made it personal, everything that happened, instead of understanding that everything that happened wasn't done to me. It just happened because it was all about my father's programs, my mother's programs, my friends' programs. Yeah. Everything that happens is about that person themselves. Yeah. So I made it mine. I took it and put that upon myself. I'm not safe. And this was done to me, thus I'm not good enough. How can I be? Or nobody would have ever done this to me.
Right.
So, key number 4 is building self-esteem. Because that is the next step to actually believing, okay, I deserve to protect myself, focus on my needs, assert myself, love, I deserve it. I am worth it. I don't have to do anything to earn it. I was born in love onto this planet with love. No matter whether my parents love me or not, it got nothing to do with them. That is my existence. Yeah. My presence here is light and love. And getting in touch with that is the next thing that we work with in the steps, is building the self-esteem with loads of tools to do so, right? Mm-hmm. And that takes us right to the final step, the 5th step, which is basically a toolbox. Because if you look at your external life, you go to work, you have a whole set of tools that you use. You go to school for years and years, most people, or education, professional training, whether you're a tradesman, whether you're what would you call it, like somebody who, whether you're a mechanic or a professor, whether you're an accountant or a beautician, you have a toolbox.
Exactly. We all have our tools.
Yes, and we need the same toolbox in our inner emotional and spiritual life. So having that toolbox and upgrading, whether it's communication, whether it is activities in our life, that is the 5th step, so that it actually isn't, none of this is too fluffy woo-woo. This is implementable today things, because in my experience, that is what we need when we're not feeling great inside,
Yeah, I'm a big believer. I mean, I think the idea of having tools, strategies, systems in place works, because otherwise you just tend to fall back on the old programs. The things that we've done for years and years and years, they have dug these pathways into our brain. Literally, we have these grooves in our brain. So when we're faced with these situations where we feel stressed, or we feel threatened, or we feel like we have to prove ourselves, hey, those programs are quick and easy to pop right back into play, and we start positioning ourselves just like we always have. So I love that you have these sort of systems. These are your tools. These are how you use them in certain situations. Because I think if it would be ideal if we had, emotional intelligence and self-management skills in school, right? Like, we don't learn psychology.
Amen to that.
Until you get into university, or maybe you have a teensy bit of it, in high school, but it's more like the theory, as opposed to, this is how you manage your emotions and your life. Like, wouldn't that be a brilliant idea?
Yeah, it would be absolutely amazing, and it should be mandatory, I really think so. We need it, we need it. This is a technological world we live in, which enables us to share the things we're doing today. So that's the beautiful part of it, but it also disconnects us somewhat So if we could get empathy and emotional intelligence and values, needs, and boundaries, onto the schedule at school, hallelujah,
Yeah.
I'll walk front row in that march, girlfriend. You just let me know when it's happening.
Yeah. Well,
I'll sign that petition.
It is happening. The positive psychology movement has done a lot for bringing those exact skills into even elementary school, primary school. So it is happening bit by bit. And the other thing that is happening is this wonderful 5-week course that you're allowing the world to get in on, where they can interact with you and me online through videos, through a safe, secure learning platform. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. It's like this new baby, because first of all, it's a collaboration with you, which I'm so thrilled about, because we're so on the same page with all of this developmental work. And then it's just, it's an amazing way for people all over the world to connect in a secure, closed, secret, and people might be like, why is she saying secret? But it's a shame-free forum. It's a space where we can do what I call tax-free talking and pass on these tools and these exercises, in a way that it feels safe to actually dive in. And then let's not underestimate, Andrea, when we get together in a small group of people who are on the same journey, different places, different nationality, but magic happens.
Yeah.
Magic just happens when we allow ourselves to connect a little bit to other people. When we sit there with recognition, we realize, okay, so I'm not the only person in the world who feels like this. When we get positive feedback for people in our group from our bravery for just showing up, maybe sharing something difficult or sharing something wonderful, magic just happens. So I'm so excited about it. And this, of course, is an open invitation to anybody listening to check out our talk on emotional freedom. Or if right now that you're ready to take your life somewhere else, then to join the online program. There's some limited seating going on, as there always is with that type of program. But don't hold back. Jump in and check it out is what I would say.
Absolutely. Well, we'll put the links in the description.
Yes.
You could also email me, Dr. Andrea at americaoutloud.com, and I'd be happy to give you some more information about it as well. And how can we connect with you online, dear Helena?
Well, I'm on my website, helenephilipsen.com, and I am Helene Philipsen at America Out Loud. So you can connect with me there as well. I have a
We have to spell out your whole name in your email?
Yeah. Yes, I think so, actually. But the easier thing may be I have a weekly column on America Out Loud where I write about these things quite often, actually, both emotional eating, emotional freedom, love, feelings, the relationship between men and women in this world that we live in today, and balance in life. And it usually comes out every Friday. And it's under my name, Helena, with an E at the end, E like echo, and then Philipsen, Philipsen. I could spell it with the whole phonetical alphabet like the military people do.
It's okay.
But I won't.
Well, wonderful.
Through that.
So connect with Helena, connect with me at andreapennington.com. We're also on Facebook a lot. And you can find us at America Out Loud on our respective expert pages. Well, Helena, it's been fun to have this conversation, just being open and honest about where we've been and where we're going. So I thank you, I honor you for the great work that you're doing in the world.
Right back at you, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me. It is always such a pleasure.
All right, my friends. Well, until next time, remember that you are a gift to the world. So share your presence with passion. And may you be free from suffering. May you be truly well in body, mind, and heart. And may you be truly happy. Much love. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Dr. Andrea. And did you know I'm on the radio daily? Visit AmericaOutloud.com to download the Talk Radio app.